Yeah, this is opportunity when we take the show on the road here and visit our buildings. We always want to highlight, some of the things we have going on here, and the hard part's picking out what we want to have presented. And, I went to Carice. We've got tonight dress rehearsals going on here to the left. That plays this weekend. They're doing a great job. That stage continues to get more and more elaborate. We got awards going around. We've had a very successful fall sports season. And I think, last year we sat here and listened to our FFA program, present on soils. And I still blown away with how we're represented at the state level, in the national level, and soon to be the global level. Joanna and Hannah represented us on our dairy team that traveled out, that traveled and won second place. I think it was a three-way tie that we broke. North Miami FFA, puts a mark in all of those competition levels and set the bar extremely high. So Chris had asked Hannah and Joanna here to share their experience here, and they've got a little presentation for us, I believe. And then, we'll turn the floor over to them. So. I always tell a story. My brother and sister were both more involved than I was as a student here at FFA. And, my brother went to IU and never left, and married a local girl down there. He's got 4 kids, and they've gotten involved in the Ellisville FFA program. And my brother always kept his kids accountable and said, this is great, but it's nothing like what we had in North Miami. And his kids always questioned, what are you talking about? Until my niece was old enough to go to the convention the first time. And she walked away and said that, Dad, you weren't lying. North Miami wins everything. So it was an interesting experience for her. So, I also would like to take this opportunity before I turn it over, but Hannah was one of our 3 Lily finalists this year for the county. So she's got the hard part out of the way, the interview, application. So now I believe it's a waiting game still. So
Yep.
But we wish her the best and did an excellent job representing North Miami. I think the other 2 finalists were what? From the
Mechanical, yep.
So all females. I don't know what's going on here, but this year.
You just did distinguish on women too, didn't you?
Yep, I got first runner up in that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, so I'm sure I know quite a few of you in here, but I'm Hannah Early.
And I'm Joanna Wildermuth.
And for our senior project this year, we decided to host our annual Soils Invitational.
So first we want to talk about our soils experience. We have each judged for 4 years, winning state titles individually and on teams, and competed at a national contest in Oklahoma where I received 6th place for home site and 7th place for land site. And our team also received 4th place that had Hannah on it as well. So we have a lot of experience doing this for multiple years and have appreciated teaching the younger kids.
Yep, we've kind of just grown up judging together, not even really just judging through 4-H and FFA. It's been a great experience for both of us. So a little bit on why we chose this project. North Miami's definitely had a long history of success in not only the soils career development, but in FFA in general. And we wanted to be able to play a small part in continuing that success. And by being able to hold this invitational, we were able to carry on those opportunities and give more learning opportunities for the younger kids.
And I would also like to point out this picture is from 1994, so it might have a few old faces in it. So our goal for this project was to create a valuable learning experience and make improvements for past years while still raising money for our chapter. So we definitely had to update some things, which Hannah will talk about on the next slide.
So the first thing we knew that we needed to get done for our invitational was to get a flyer out, because when we booked the date, we realized that the Purdue Invitational was also the same day. And Mr. Oldermuth came to me and was like, hey, we need to get the flyer out. And me and Joanna are like, this thing looks like it's probably from the 1980s. It's probably about time to update this. and we saw that other schools were sending their flyers out, and it wasn't just a blank white sheet of paper. So we were both able to work on that and design it and put some of the times and registration costs in there, and also where it'd be held and other things like that. And everybody's favorite part is probably the awards, so we made sure to put that on there because I think that kind of makes our contest stick out from other ones, is the different awards that we have.
So the preparations we had to do for our contest was order the Scantrons. This can be hard sometimes because we have to look at our numbers from last year, look at where the state contest is being held this year, which it was in Huntington County. So we assumed that there would be about at least 50 to 100 more kids this year. So making sure that we ordered the correct number. Reserve the Scantron machine, that could be a bit of a hassle. The Scantron machine is one of the few in the area, so we have to make sure another school doesn't have it at the time and make sure to reserve that far ahead. And then arrange for a porta potty for the contest day, because we don't want a bunch of kids having to go to the bathroom and trying to ask the guy if they can use his house. Nobody wants that. So that's something that we've had trouble with in the past, but we used Johnny on the spot to make sure to get that done right this time.
So for our awards, one of the things we talked about was that we wanted to make improvements from the years that had passed, and one of the ways we did that was by including banners this year. In the past, we'd just done plaques, and we noticed that the state program started incorporating banners, so we both worked on designing that, and we incorporated a picture from the previous year's Soils Invitational, and then gave those out to the top 5 senior teams, and then top 3 rookie and junior teams. And we were also able to order those banners from a local shop in Wabash called Milliner Printing, and they're big supporters of FFA, so that was kind of cool. And then the plaques we got from TikTok Trophy Shop, and we also got our knives engraved there.
So the host site, we had to do some research to figure out where the best possible place would be for different soil variety types. And we had a few setbacks. We went to a couple places and they turned us down very politely. But it's hard to commit to having so many people on your land and us digging around trying to figure out what we want. So we found one just south of the school owned by Steve Greer with a good variety of soils that held up for the contest, and it definitely showed us a lot of improvements from last year's.
Yeah, and it was definitely like really beautiful scenery back there. I know there's a couple of people that didn't necessarily want to go back and look at the pits, but they wanted to go and just take pictures of all the hills and stuff, because you don't necessarily see that usually around here. So one of the biggest challenges for us was setting up judging card because of technology. I think we all know how that works sometimes. It doesn't always want to be our friends. But with the help of Jesus Santana, we were able to set it up the Monday before the contest, and mainly our goal through that was to organize the whole logistics and different tiebreakers, because usually those are going to happen in a contest, and different categories that the participants would be in.
So then we had to dig and evaluate the pits. This can sometimes take a long time. We were out there Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night before the contest on Saturday. We have to make sure and get exactly what we want for the kids and for everyone. So we had some help from past FFA members like Hannah Miller, Harley McVeigh, and soil scientist Gary Hudson helped us evaluate all the pits and get all the correct answers needed. So we dug and evaluated them with all 4 distinct. There was 5 pits, but we had 4 completely separate styles, so everyone would be prepared for future contests. There's a lot of kids that go to a competition that haven't been to a single contest before, so we really want to help them out and get them to see everything they need to. So it did offer a great learning variety.
So on contest day, these were just some of the statistics we gathered from judging card. For individuals, we had 56 juniors, which would be middle school and below, and then 22 rookies, which is usually like your freshmen, but it's anybody that hasn't competed in an area contest before, and then 108 seniors, so that would be anybody that has competed in soils before, and 11 advisors, which is actually one of the coolest things I think about our Soils Invitational, is that we actually have a group for the advisors to go through and look at the pits and critique, and they also get pretty cool awards. Sometimes we have to monitor and make sure they're taking it seriously and not sharing answers, but it's hard to get them to listen to a couple high schoolers, but I think we managed to get it done. And then for the teams, we had 20 junior teams, 14 rookies, and 31 senior teams. So altogether, 197 individuals and and 65 teams. And we would just like to add on that, as we said, Purdue also hosted a Soils Invitational that day, and they had 68 individuals and 23 teams participating, which we feel like really speaks volumes to how much people respect North Miami's Soils program, because Mr. Wildermuth really puts the time into making sure that we are getting good pits dug out there and a good variety shown for people to learn from.
And something unique about our contest is he always helps all the coaches go through all the pits and make them understand why we mark the answers that way. He doesn't just send them off on their own. He wants everyone to have a good learning experience, and we do too. So our finances overview, it's a pretty expensive contest, but we did up the entry fee from $7 to $8 this year, as many of the other schools did the same to make a little bit more of a profit. The banners were around $250, with the plaques being about $238, and the knives and engraving with $149, and the monetary about $50, and the porta potty with $176, and the pizza as well costs a lot for all our workers. They put a lot of time into this. It was about $118. And then the water for the day, it was a very hot day, and it was sunny out, which is good for when you're looking at soils pits. That costs about $23. Overall, the income for the entry fees was about $1,576, and after everything, we made a profit of $568.
So definitely one of the biggest things that we learned from doing our senior project is that it really takes a village to get through this stuff, and we couldn't have done it without all the help and support we had from our advisors and other people. So we'd like to extend a special thank to Mr. Wildermuth and Ms. Freeman for being our advisors on the project, and they both compete in soils obviously and teach it, so they're definitely helpful in learning even more. And then Steve Greer for hosting us, Gary Hudson, the soil scientist. Even by doing this process, I think we got to know him a little bit more and made another connection there that's really awesome. We got to talk to him again at the state contest and see what he thought about the pits and everything. And then Randy and Harley McVeigh, they both graduated from North Miami and even continue to come back and help dig the pits. And then Hannah Miller for helping go through the pits, as she's on the track to be a soil scientist, and she was a former North Miami graduate. And then her mom, Stacy Wildermuth, for picking up the pizza and water and bringing them on contest day. And all of our fellow FA members for helping be group leaders and hole monitors on contest day.
And a special shout out to Kirsten Kuhn for going with us to talk to Steve Greer. We all didn't really know him that well, and she definitely helped us get the place a lot easier. He's very welcome and open to it.
Yep. So to kind of steer off onto another path would be how our dairy team did. So in June we competed at the state contest, which was held a little bit north of here, and we were able to make it out. The second team there, the first team declined the opportunity because going to nationals for FFA is kind of a challenge, because it's not just necessarily judging. There's a lot of learning and teaching that had to go along with it. Not every advisor knows how to do that. So after I placed first at state and Joanna placed 9th overall, we were able to move on. And then at nationals, we were very fortunate to have Mr. Jones and Mr. Wildermuth help teach us. We met almost every single week and practiced learning stuff that we wouldn't have necessarily gotten to, more about the dairy industry and how we manage those things. And we were able to come out second in the nation for that, which was a really great opportunity. And now we have another opportunity to go to Europe, which is a really cool experience, especially just for high schoolers to have. So yeah, our team did consist of Callie, Riley, Joanna, and me. And that will be later this summer if it does get approved. And we're just so thankful for everybody that helped us with that.
Yeah, and Mr. Jones has always poured so much time into the dairy program. He works on it year round to put together the best possible things he can and all the practices. And he definitely is, we wouldn't be where we were without him in the dairy. I don't even know if we would have a team or anything. And then Riley and Callie for being willing to drive back from Purdue many weekends to come and do this, and miss classes as well. And with Callie's knowledge, it also helped us a lot, as she is majoring in animal science.
And Mr. Wildermuth did want us to tell you guys that he wished he could be here tonight, but he's leaving for Louisville with the poultry team, so he wasn't able to make it, unfortunately. Definitely a busy guy. Are there any questions we could answer for you guys?
Great job.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have the overnight we should be out of country trip to Scotland Island on the agenda tonight for approval.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you very much.
And I have your awards that you're missing.
Uh-oh.
Or no. Strategic plan.
Yeah, we have our academic data to present to you this evening, and then take a little time, when Danielle and Chris present. We've had the opportunity to go to some presentations here late, actually Danielle was at one this morning, right? I almost thought that was yesterday, it's been a long day. The accountability, Indiana's bringing back a letter grade to each school. We will be held accountable for this current year's data, and the formal accountability model will be approved at the state board on December 10th. And so I just want to share, they put together, Steve Baker, who we've listened to, a former principal, has been involved in this process, kind of put together one pager that I helped over here briefly this evening. So we'll start here with the elementary. And Danielle, let you share where you're at here as of mid-November.
Sure, so if you go to slide 6, there we go. So here, this is our in-class data that we do 3 times a year. This is the dyslexia screener. So right now, our average for the beginning of the year benchmark, which we will do again in January, is 64%. I did want to just share, I looked up really quickly, last year, our beginning of the year average for those 3 grade levels was 53. So we are starting a little higher than we did last year. So that's a positive that we didn't have as much summer learning loss. So that was good. The next one that we have is the IXL English Language Arts, and that is 2nd through 6th grade. Our beginning of the year was 67%, and last year we were at 57%. So we're starting a little higher out of the gate again this year, so that's good. And I tried to, one thing that I changed on these slides, just so you have as a board, as I share these each year, I am sharing the end of the year for each, so we can look each year at the end of the year where we end as well. So I'll kind of update this as we go through the next few years with this. For HMH, that is our Houghton Mifflin Reading into Reading program. We do that growth measure 3rd through 6th grade. So our beginning of the year in September was 54%, and last year we started at 48%. So again, 6 percentage points higher than we were where we started last year. And then finally on slide 12 is our IXL math. There we go. Our average for this year was 65%, and last year we started at 50%. So 15 percentage points above where we began last year. So that's one of the things that we look at year to year is, are we starting a little higher, because we want to see that data circle up. So are we starting a little bit higher than we have in previous years? Because that to me shows that they're retaining information and we're not having as much learning loss. So that's our beginning of the year data. And one thing I will change, we are going to do IXL in January. We decided to wait until 2nd semester because a lot of times we'll have move-ins over Christmas, and so we're going to do that when we come back as well. Okay?
these sixth graders, obviously, was fifth graders. So we're not gonna get improved until they slide down into the seventh grade, correct? Am I making sense?
Say that again.
Yeah. I just wonder why that low test score just moves on instead of improves on the fifth and sixth grade.
On for classes. It's brand new set of standards each year. So if they have not mastered previous year's standards, it compiles, especially in math, because math is linear. So I think that that plays into it, because we don't, and that's part of what we're doing with the warrior period, especially with the fifth and sixth grade, doing those lessons, those gap skill lessons, which I think, Kenny, did you put any information about warrior period in here for this one?
Not yet, no, not yet.
Okay, that's fine, because I'll share that in December when you're at our building. But that's part of what that warrior period is for, Stan, is because we know that if they haven't mastered all, like, the fifth grade standards, then they're going into sixth, not having mastered all the fifth, and then it compounds. So I think that's a large portion of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Kinda?
But it seems like you always see a drop from fourth to fifth. So if they're mastering the fourth grade stuff, why do we see such a drop in the fifth grade stuff?
Rigor. So when you look at the standards and you compare what they are asked to do in fourth, there is a jump in fifth. So they might, in fourth, if they're doing fractions or adding, subtracting fractions, then in fifth, they're then adding, subtracting mixed numbers. So there's a second step in there, because you have to move those mixed numbers into fractions, do it, and then move them back. So part of it is just the complexity, the depth and complexity of the standards.
So is there more rigor than in sixth?
It bumps up again, yeah, it does every year. The other piece to that too, I feel in fifth and sixth, is our expectations of, we are now looking at not just taking the concrete steps, but now putting inferencing in. And so we're making them do a lot of what I call the heavy lifting, because they should have all of those basic skills mastered, like multiplication facts, all of those things that they should just automatically know to be able to then do the more complex math. So when you're doing mixed fractions and it's 32/3, you should be able to go 10 2/3, because they should already have all of those math facts memorized. And so some of it is all also automaticity. Can they pull that up quickly? So it's more applying those skills to new situations or problems.
So based on the new grading scale, what would you say our grade would be?
I will not even venture to guess that, because the state does not have it figured out yet. They don't have scale scores figured out. They don't have the actual points that kids will be awarded. Like, that is all still, the committee meets December 3rd to hash the rest of it out before it even goes to, I know I'm stealing your thunder, Kim, before it goes to the December 10th vote for the State Department Board of Education.
But if we were using the old model,
Right now, we're a B.
sorry.
Right now, we're a B. But we haven't had the old model, I mean, the old model has been obsolete for, what, 6 years?
I don't think a new letter grade's been issued in 7 years.
7 years. Yeah, so it would be based off of some of it ISTEP data, to be quite honest, not even iLearn. We had just started to make that transition to iLearn, and then we haven't had a letter grade, it's just been frozen. And
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean,
gonna be
they're
completely
gonna be
different.
resetting that bar day, but performance and growth were the only 2 measures, previously for that letter grade. And I think you'll see here, when I put this one pager up, that the state has done, always been an advocate at the state level. He's now a consultant and is retired. He gave this presentation to my study council, and we meet, actually it's a group of superintendents, it's a Friday morning Zoom every Friday. It's always superintendents, but with this presentation, we opened that avenue up to our principals, and we quickly exceeded the Zoom limit of 300 in around, within a minute. Danielle, you were late to the game, you were trying to log in, I think, right on time, so. With that said, they shared notes. He presented today up at Region 8, and Danielle is who went and listened to that presentation. And then post-approval, once this process is finalized, he'll actually be putting a presentation for my Region 3 superintendent group in Kokomo. And we'll be extending that invitation to administrators, counselors, and so on to really see how this is gonna be put in place. But to summarize, every school is gonna be given a grade, corp grade. They're also gonna receive 4 other grades to these buckets. So there'll be a K through 3 bucket, there'll be a grade 4 through 8 bucket, there'll be a grade 9 and 10 bucket, and a grade 11 and 12 bucket. And if you were to read this front paragraph, I think the biggest difference with this model is it really emphasizes the student's unique skill set. So there will be points generated by every student in every grade, whether they passed I-Learn or not. And so, kind of set the model here for you. K through 3, I-Learn proficiency will be that standard, ELA and math, but instead of it being all or nothing, where, pass plus was what I-STEP days were. If you were to be proficiency on a plus level, you may earn 75 points for this test. If you were near mastery, near proficiency, it was like 65 was the example we gave. And if you were way below proficiency, instead of it being 0, it would be a point total of maybe like 35 points. And he's projecting on some of this based on conversations he's had. But then you take that student, and throughout the year, if you look over to the right, there's a big plus sign. They're gonna take all these other measurements, and you have the ability basically to earn bonus points to that kid. And so it's really, they don't want us to, if a kid's not close, because what I think used to happen on the old test is, you had your group of students you knew were gonna pass, and you had a group of students that were considered at risk, that if you put the effort into those students, you could get them to pass that test. And then you had a bucket of students, unfortunately, that you knew, as hard as you could try, you may show growth, but they may not pass that test that year, and you could, based on data, pretty much predetermine that. And so they're trying to eliminate that process. But additional knowledge, skills, and experiences, so they're gonna be looking at reading proficiency, so that's potentially iRead in 3rd grade. You could get, bonus points if you pass iRead. Accelerated literacy, he described that terminology as if, say, maybe you were 15% as a 1st grader, and you accelerated in 3rd grade to 55%. You may not have met that threshold to pass, but you grew 40%, and they would consider that an accelerated literacy increase, and there's points associated with that. Regular school attendance, you're gonna see in every bucket. The expectation and threshold was 94%, and that is 10 days of school year. And the kicker that we're gonna need to communicate, that's 10 days whether you're sick, that's 10 days whether you're on vacation, it's 10 days whether you had surgery, and that's 10 days whether you were truant 10 times. And so that threshold, if that kid has 94% attendance for the year, and that's measured on a half-day, full-day scale across the state, they're gonna be able to earn bonus points for every student we have that has a 94% attendance rate. And then you're gonna see, there's EL proficiency, and as we go down this chart, K through 3, you're building the building blocks, the foundation of knowledgeable skills, so I-Learn's still that base score, 75, 65, 55, or 35, and then over to the right, you're gonna see some similar abilities to add to that score. So elementary, they were fairly creative, I think, here. Not as many data points to work with, there's not a grad rate, there's not, diploma seals to earn in the K-6 environment. And it's not really K-6. K-3 is the first bucket, 4 through 8, so 4th grade through, the end of middle school is where this next bucket, you'll notice in junior high, one of the extra credit areas is high school level coursework in 7th and 8th grade. So that's gonna be something we work as we look at the schedule. How many opportunities do we provide our students to earn college credit as an 8th grader? They're gonna have the ability to you're a sophomore and your expectation, I think, was to have, 28 credits to be on track, they're gonna measure how many of our sophomores are on track to graduate. And then they're gonna assign a score to that. And they've even narrowed it down. You've not only gotta have certain 10+ high school credits at the end of 9th grade, but you've gotta have 2 in math, 2 in English, 2 in science, social studies, or a foreign language. And then I think this is where this is a lot better model. We're gonna get additional points for sort of CTE coursework, college career coursework. The biology ECA exam that Jonathan's taken great pride in and our students have done above state average on is gonna actually count. There's gonna be points associated with that test. The benchmark for the PSAT can earn bonus points for a kid. Back on track in high school credits, that's that same kind of concept as accelerated literacy. If you have a student in 9th grade or 8th grade that wasn't on track, they get back on track, you got the potential to earn bonus points there. And then you'll see school attendance, IN is the alternative assessment for special ed. I think we're limited to the percentage of students that can take that assessment. And then EL as well, there's potential opportunity there. And then lastly, grades 11 and 12, the key outcome is this diploma. Right now, our grades 10, 11, and 12 are on a high school diploma, the core 40. Our freshmen are gonna be on the new Indiana diploma and be pursuing a seal. And everything we've heard is Dr. Jenner is obsessed with diploma seals. And, we're gonna be held accountable to how many of those seals that we issue. And even early on, if we have students meet those criteria, we could get points for them over the next couple of years. But, we need to make sure we roll out a process here that provides opportunities, not just the academic seal, but the employment seal, the enlistment seal, that work-based learning. You can see over here on the right, we're gonna get credit for those students that get those hours in. And it's a lot to track. It's a lot to keep on top of for where these kids go over those 4 years in high school. College level coursework, there's gonna be points there for earning those. You can see regular school attendance is in every box. That biology ECA still comes into play. And then as opposed to it being the PSAT, there's opportunities to earn points for the SAT and ACT as opposed to PSAT. So it's different. This is a different model. There's frustrations that this is being approved in December, and we're going to be held accountable to it for this school year. This process was rolled out. I think the initial drafts were very different than where they've come. So they have done a good job of listening, but this will be implemented. And like I said, every one of these groups will get a grade, and then they'll be combined to create one corporation grade as well. So that is as quick of a summary as I can go over. This one page is actually fairly nice, but do know every one of those is much more elaborate than that. And Steve stressed this isn't put out by the state. This is what Steve put together in his presentation. And so it's a really good starting point though for us to start a conversation with people on what's going to be measured. So this will be something we keep in front of you. It's going to be something that we make decisions based off of to fit these buckets. And I do like, I came away from listening through these meetings this fall. I do like the emphasis that, even though you may not pass the test, there are still plenty of areas, you may have resulted in 35 points after I learned, but if you met, 3 of those 4 goals on the right, and they're worth 20 points apiece, that student potentially could be worth 95 points out of 100. And so, it's an interesting concept, but it's coming. Like I said, December 10th is when the Department of Ed will finalize, and then we'll have really, I think, that second semester to figure out how everything's measured. When you ask what grade you think we'll be plugging numbers, and putting those projections in. One of the big concerns is they use the GPS data, and it's dashboard, and it's not always the most accurate.
you know,
It just
the
seems
way
like
it is,
there's
but I
throw
think
it
this,
against the wall, see what sticks. you know?
I think it takes into consideration more than just pass or didn't pass. Because a kid is more than just pass or didn't pass.
Yeah, because they put a ton of work into Benson in the elementary. And yeah, none of those results really showed until he, got into high school and even left here, so.
But everything we've said as I've found the state with pathways and these diploma changes all correlate to this accountability measure. And it is a lot, the pessimist always says, how can we expect, 13, 14-year-olds to know what they want to do? It's a lot. So I hope there are, left turns and right turns that are allowed. If they change their mind and, they go to a work-based learning experience as a junior and it's awful, that they're gonna have options to try something different. But it is gonna high school is going to look different. We are gonna have kids going all over the county, surrounding counties on any given day. And they really opened up, if you're pursuing especially that work-based, that employee seal, I mean, you're really almost a full-time employee your senior year. You won't even be in this building. And so, in the honor seals, those are, they're even more challenging. So it's gonna make high school look different. And thankfully, we've got a strong career center to partner with this as well. And I think as a small school, that's extremely important because that opens up a lot of opportunities. But do know where Indiana's coming from. They throw stats out that 60+% of the workforce is within 10 years of retirement. And, you can add up every graduate in college in Indiana, every student, and you fill, what do they say, 60% of the jobs. And that's the thing, they all stay here in Indiana. And so it's a challenge they have in front of them. And, I think that's where a lot of this is being driven from. So.
And I can attest, this year, we're seeing a huge fluctuation in our students who in the past typically wouldn't take internships or work-based learning experiences from their school day, who are out of our building for half day. And they're not even going for seals yet. But it's the way that the atmosphere and the environment is just changing. But honestly, these kids that are out there doing it, they want to do it, they want to learn, they want to be out there. They find those experiences meaningful, as opposed to maybe being forced to be in a class here during the day that they may not have interest in. So it does allow that flexibility, and we're, like I said, already seeing it this year.
Well, we're an hour in and we got through number 6, so, move in here to staff reports. All right, I brief corporate report here for you. Couple things I just want to highlight. We received our 1782 notice. This is the form that finalizes our budget for this year, so we're working on verifying those numbers. I will tell you, there are things here that we don't have answers to. We're still trying to figure out how tax caps are being implemented, how they affect our debt service, how they affect operations. So we're asking a lot of questions. We actually got a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Brian Harmon, who we use as a consultant. Hopefully, feel a little better where this notice puts us. But it's just part of the budget process. This evening, as you see on the agenda, we've reached a tentative agreement for bargaining. The association ratified last week, and we will be holding the ratification of the master contract, which is the last step of this process, on Monday at 5 p.m. And so we'll get that advertised, get that scheduled. Tonight we'll discuss what the TA is, and we'll work on getting the contract red line written up and ready to publish for Monday. So we are still finalizing title grant applications. Between the pre-application, all the title grants, it's about a 6-month window. I feel like these days it's a lot. And so I think we're on our last draft. I hope to get that pre-application approved. We did receive formal notification or finalization of the robotics grant. This is the first year we've applied for it. We applied for it maybe, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. But we're qualified $7,000 for a new team, $3,500 for an existing team. So our elementary program got $3,500 each for their 2 teams. And then Les Walker-Layton here rebuilding robotics in the VEX world has a $7,000 grant to help get things going. And looking forward to where they got a lot more lockers than we have students these days, and so talked about being able to maybe use that east end to showcase, you know, our FFA accomplishments. As you can see, we've, you know, this has been a longstanding tradition in here, but just doing a way to recognize their successes. So, fall sports season wrapped up this past Friday. Our football team took a tough loss in the regional championship game we hosted. Unbelievable season across the board. It was a successful fall, very competitive in all areas, and, you know, believe it or not, girls wrestling and girls basketball are 2 weeks in, well into their season. You know, a lot of these young men who played Friday night were at practice yesterday, so you really just change gears and start the winter sports season. So looking forward to winter as well. So we're doing a lot of good things there. Had a productive meeting today. We, as you know, have spent millions of dollars, 5 years of replacing all of our rooftop units, our air handlers, ceiling tiles, still merging old technology with new technology, old equipment. You know, we were replacing units that were original antiques to this building in the late 60s. So that's not an easy process, but we did have I felt like an encouraging collaborative meeting. We asked, strongly encouraged, mandated, Johnson Controls, MCOR, you know, at the same table and trying to put a button on some of these projects. We had an electrical, what we call surge, we think, and it's just not certain systems off. Not all of them came back very friendly this past week, but just want to give an update. That's an ongoing process and made a lot of headway today, which was encouraging. And then lastly, you know, this school accountability model is not going to go away. I'm glad we were able to roll out kind of a preview, but I guess stay tuned, and we'll continue to give updates each month as things become finalized. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Danielle. Give us an update at the elementary.
We did have our Veterans Day program this last week, and each year the American Legion always does the flag essay contest where the students learn about the flag, have a test that they do, and then also write an essay. So this year our winners were Savannah Campbell and Jeremiah Snavely. So congratulations to them. And this Friday we have our PTO Mother-Son movie night, and we also have our first robotics competition at Sharp Creek. So I'll have a team going there, and then we'll have something at the school as well. Next Tuesday is our annual 4th grade Pioneer Day, so we'll have a lot of activities going on with that. That's always the kids always look forward to that. And then it's Christmas season, so we will have our Winter Wonderland on December 11th. On Thursday, we do have a reindeer coming again this year, so that'll be fun. We have our Santa shop, and then the 17th is our 4th and 5th grade Christmas program. The 18th is pack party, and the 19th is our very last trip to the Roxy, since it'll be closing. So it'll be a nice way to end first semester, but sad because that's been a tradition here for a really long time. That's what I got.
Can you talk about plans, what you're gonna do next year to replace that?
So we already prepped for that. The PTO purchased a huge inflatable screen. They actually borrowed it over here. How big is it?
It's ginormous.
Yes. I picked one out, and then Brittany Hand said, I just got the biggest one they had. Like, it takes over the whole end of the gym.
Yeah,
Like-
the width of it is almost the width of a basketball court.
Yeah.
And it's really tall, it's well above the basket. We borrowed it for a middle school incentive day, we showed a movie, and it was great.
Yeah. So, yes, we already planned ahead, and so we will continue to do it, but it'll be at the school instead. But we'll still do the popcorn and everything. But yeah, we do have a plan for that. It's just sad because it was always nice to, the fact that the whole school got to go and experience it was just a really cool thing. But we'll figure out some other things to make it special too.
There was a rumor going around, whether it's true or not, that Peru Schools was gonna keep one theater and equipment in that one theater.
If it is in we'd kind of have to change it a little bit, but, we could even do different groups at, you know, different days. It would be nice if they actually did do that.
Too many rumors though.
I need them to keep the one that has 180 seats, though, to make it, make it doable for us. So, it would be nice if they did that, because we could still utilize it, and it is a really cool thing for the kids, so, we'll see. But we do have a plan in case it doesn't pan out.
We also hosted Veterans Day program. Kudos to Sarah McBride and Sarah Thomas for organizing the program. They did a great job. We invited the sixth grade over. We had a couple sixth graders that had speaking parts during our program. Our music, band and choir
criteria. Laws were changed, we reflected that in the contract between Section A and Section D for base salary increases. Section F was an ERB compliance that we actually missed last year, and so the third sentence in Section F will be removed. It involved coming back, I think, and having a place over long extended. It was very common sense, both sides agreed. I think even before we got into bargaining, that's what we needed to do in regards to being compliant there. Section M involves the sick leave bank. We've changed the language a little there, but we're also allowing our staff to summon the sick bank with a max of 20 days to extend that leave. That language was not there previously. And then the language of when they can access that under the 10 sick leave days remaining. So that is changes there to the sick leave language, sick leave bank. And that committee makes those decisions on granting those days. Section P, under health insurance, we saw a 4.5% increase with the trust this past fall, and we bargained or agreed to the corporate paying for 3% of that increase. And so if you round those numbers to the 12th, that would result in the following corporation share of the single plan, employee spouse plan, employee child, or family. So an estimated cost for this increase is $8,500. So, and then lastly, to reflect just current practices in these sports, boys basketball, girls basketball, football, and volleyball at the middle school level, changing the ECA schedule for the head coach to be at .05, assistant coach to be at .03, and if there are enough participants to have two teams in each of the 7th and 8th grade team, we would pay the particular sport head coach would be paid for each grade. So total cost to the tentative agreement is roughly estimated at $57,637 for the TA. So we'll keep this posted. We will work on the red line contract, the language, and then what we'll be ratifying on Monday is implementing these tentative agreement changes into the overall collective bargaining agreement, and that'll be what we vote on as a board, as what you vote on as a board on Monday. trip, so, as usual, Jim's very thorough in the application, but this is their trip to Scotland, Ireland, goes over how it'll be funded, what they'll be doing. Fortunately, we've done this before, so we're not going to the green for the first time, so, I'm sure they're looking forward to this trip. I think they mentioned this would be late summer. Last time we had them come back, and it was a really neat presentation to see, what they were able to experience over there, so, yeah, this request is coming from FFA for the trip there, and finishing second
So,
national day.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Eckert, second by Mr. Floyd. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next meeting will be, regular school board meeting will be December 16th, elementary.
Yeah, I would note the meeting on Monday, will be a public
Monday
meeting
at
at 5 for the ratification of the contract, so. Yep, and then December, we will be meeting over, in the library downstairs at the elementary, so.
That meeting will be in the central office.
On Monday, we'll be over there, yeah.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Move on to,
Sorry, I'm plugging in the meeting for a little bit. I think this, I don't wanna say it's school year, but the calendar year's winding down. It's always interesting to see all the activities going on for Christmas, Thanksgiving and everything, but, it sounds like you're staying on task also, which is great, so just keep up the good work.
It's always nice to have kids come in, regardless of activity or anything like the FFA. Many others come in, that's always good to see that. Those girls did a really good job. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I like to hear him speak, they do so well, and congratulations to, Hannah, is it Hannah Early?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the, getting into the, represented us for the Lily, that's quite the accomplishment. And I do appreciate her coming into the meetings each time, and enjoy hearing him speak so much better than I do, so.
I wish we had that reason to speak. Speaking is wasn't my thing.
oh, sorry. No, FFA is always great to have in here. Again, they both did well. I love listening, to the Lord Ruth girl. She speaks very well. And then Hannah is amazing. Yes, one of the 3 Lily finalists. Hannah also, runner-up for Distinguished Young Women. She got first for Jerry judging, first place, individual. Those are the kind of kids that like they're worth it. Like those are amazing kids. I spent the whole fall with Hannah, and thank you guys for being around for me to be able to do that with those girls. But just on, from school to FFA to golf course, like she was an all conference player. She's amazing, kid, and she just, it was good to see her in here. I was glad to see that and hear from her. So yeah, she's pretty awesome.
I just hope all your remediation work pays off. Like, you guys have put a ton of thought and time into that, and so I just hope it pays off and we see that in our test scores, so keep up the good work. And I'm always rah-rah FFA, we know that, so, yeah. I expect those kind of things, so, yeah.
Good thing about one last, everything's already been said. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, appreciate the board your time. We got a lot of work to do, it's busy, getting into these breaks will be needed, but also a lot of work to do, and, I think Reese mentioned our kids going to Heartland, and then they're starting to make decisions for next year, and, we gotta stay ahead of them a few steps, so not only managing, this school year, but getting things in order for next year, so, looking forward to that process, but also, also going into a session where, it's not a budget session, but we're keeping a really close eye at the state level on how it impacts public ed, so, yeah, appreciate it, we'll be back at it here in a month.
So,
Get another one?
Second.
All right, motion, Mr. Second by Mr. Floyd, for adjourn.
I got to.
There is still, 2 cinnamon rolls over here, so, and food, so if you're hungry, Jonathan, we're gonna have outside over there.
You pushed too hard.
Help yourselves.